Hello everyone, welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to be continuing on with our basic calculator series, where we're actually going to turn our basic calculator into a small web app using the Streamlit module. So to get started, if you watched my previous video, you would have installed Streamlit already. But if you've never installed Streamlit before, what you can do is write Python. And if you're using a Mac, you can write Python 3 instead of Python here. We're going to write -m. We're going to do pip install Streamlit. And since I already personally have installed Streamlit, it's going to say that all my packages and all that are satisfied. So it's not going to do any installations. But if you were able to run the following code that we wrote before, which is python-m pip install Streamlit, you should be getting a publicly available package that you can extend the capabilities of Python as well. So for now, we have Streamlit installed, and we're going to clear. And with Streamlit installed, now we can do our external import, because we want to use the features of Streamlit in our program. We're going to go import Streamlit st. This is going to allow us to not write Streamlit every time, but write the two letters st whenever we use the features and the functions and the components that exist in Streamlit in our program. And to get started with our Streamlit calculator app, we're just going to get started with st title saying basic calculator. And we'll save that work. And to run a Streamlit file, we're going to go Python-m Streamlit. We're going to ask it to run a file called calculator3.py, because this is our third calculator Python script, and that's the name of the file that we're using. So if I run this code, we're going to get this type of behavior. So I'm just going to copy this over, put it onto my Firefox, and there we go. Streamlit is a really quick way to make web apps, to make prototypes of an app using Python. And it's really nice to have a graphical user interface design like this, and so on. So in our goal today, when we're writing a Streamlit application that is a basic calculator, we're going to take two numeric inputs and either add, subtract, multiply, divide them. And let's see how that goes. So for us, we're going to need the two inputs here to two numbers that we want to input. So we're going to say that num1 is equal to st number input. And let's see what that does. And that doesn't exist. So I don't have it memorized, right? So if you don't have your Streamlit tools memorized, what you can do is the following. You can go to Streamlit and search for the API documentation. And you're going to be taken to an API reference sheet. And what we wanted was an input widget. And under input widget, if we go down, we have numeric input elements, and it was st underscore number input. Most likely, I was missing some required arguments, so I need a label. It's a required argument. So we're going to say that we're going to need a label, and it needs to be enter num1 here. So that's, if we save that code and rerun our file, we have our enter num1 here label, and then we are able to modify what our number is. And we can also say that this can be 1, and you can type the value into your application as well. And there are a whole bunch of others arguments that you can set. So what I'm going to do is that, well, in our case, it could be a numeric decimal, so it can be real numbers. So keeping it as a float is fine. And it will default here. It says it will default to 0.0. So all our values are going to be considered as real numbers. And we'll set a key. Since this is our first numeric input, we're going to say key. This is our num1 input. So this helps us have multiple widgets of the same type throughout your Streamlit app. So it's really important that you set up a key here, because underneath we're going to go num2 st number input, and then we are going to say label enter num2 here. And for now, I'm just going to comment that out, and we should be able to produce an error at this point. it did not. But usually when you do repeat and have the same number of same number of widgets, especially within a loop. Let's say you don't know how many widgets you have to use, so you're using a loop to generate number of widgets. That's when you will want to have custom keys. But with good practice here, we're going to say that this is going to be a key with a different key name, and it's going to be number 2 input. So if I were to run this code, we have, for our basic calculator, we are able to enter 2 numbers that we want to do an addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. And let's actually write that as a little blurb. We're going to do stwrite, which allows us to, it's like a print statement. It's like we're writing a print function, but stwrite writes it to the app itself. So welcome to our app. Please input 2 numeric values. So if I were to rerun now, it will be able to write a little message for us, and we have labeled our num1 and num2, and they're both initialized to be 0. Now we're going to need an option to make add, subtract, multiply, and division be our option. So what we can do is the following. Go back to our API document reference, and we need another input widget. So let's go input widgets here. And let's do a drop down, a select box. Okay, so we're gonna make a certain choice, and we're gonna be using the select box method. We must have a label, and we must give it an option as well, that which has to be an iterable object. So we'll call this our operator choice is equal to st select box. And since we have multiple arguments that we are setting up, I like to set up my arguments like this, where we're going to say label equal to choose an operation, period. Our options, which should change. So we're going to say that after num2 is set, we're going to say if num2 is equal to 0, we're going to say the number of options that we have, or let's say operators, is going to be add, subtract, and multiply. We're going to do add, subtract, and multiply. And for all else, our operators is going to be the same. And then we're going to have divide as well. Because when we have num2, which is going to be our second operand, which is most likely going to be our divisor, and we don't want that to be 0 because it will produce an error. So we can mitigate error checking like that in this scenario by just writing an if statement here, and then we can say that operator is going to be a empty list. Let's make them a list because we haven't talked about sets yet, which we will talk about later on. So we will do something like this. Perfect. So what I did was, if the num2 gets a value, right, and then we will put a starting value of 0 just to start off, 0.0. And what we did was, well, num2, whenever it runs, we're going to initialize it to 0. And if it's 0, they should only, and if it maintains 0, they should only be able to add, subtract, or multiply with the second operand being 0. If the second operand isn't 0, we're going to add the division option as well. Therefore, we will be able to divide with a non-zero number as our second operand. Then we're going to set our options argument for our select box, and we're going to say that this is from the variable called operators, which we declare prior. And then we're going to set a key as operator choice. We're just going to keep the variable name and the key the exact same thing. So we'll save this code. We will rerun. And if you see here, we have choose an operation, we have add, subtract, multiply. But if I were to increase this, so let's say 0.05, we're able to divide, multiply, subtract, or add. If I were to decrease this to a negative 0.01, we're still able to divide. But once we go to 0, we'll have add, subtract, multiply, and divide, and so on. Oh, this should be interesting. Multiply. I think with our code, we have to add the following. Or num2 equals negative 0.0. Let's try that. And it should be gone. Perfect. Okay, so this was just a precautionary thing. You should not need this statement, but we're just saying that, hey, if it's 0, we're gonna have only 3 possible operators. If it's not 0, we can do all of our 4 wanted operator. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is based on all this, we're gonna generate a little clickable button here that says calculate, and when we do calculate upon click, we're gonna be doing some sort of a calculation. So let's go back to our reference table here. We're going to click a button. So we're going to create a button. So we're going to say the calculate button is equal to st button. And then we're going to need some label and a key. So we're going to say label is equal to calculate. And then our key is going to be the name of the variable name, like that. Then this is going to be it's going to evaluate to true when clicked, and it's going to be false when isn't clicked. So we're going to say if calculate button is true, as in this means when the button is clicked, we're going to take num1 and num2 and apply the operator on it. So we're going to say if the operator choice is equivalent to add, then we're going to do result is equal to num1 plus num2. We'll initialize our result here to be 0, as in we don't have the value yet. It's going to be 0, and we're going to say result is equal to num1 plus num2. Else if we're going to say operator choice is equal to subtract, we're going to say result is equal to num1 minus num2, and then we're going to be copying this and applying the proper operators like so. Subtract, we're going to say multiply, and then we're going to put a multiplication symbol here, and then this is going to be the division symbol, so we're going to say if this is equal to divide. Okay, and then after that, after these conditions are all checked, we're going to display our calculation by saying st_right. We'll do a formatted string here. We will say num1 plus num1 we'll say num2 equals result. And what we're going to do is the following. We're going to do something cool here. We're going to write a operator dictionary where we're going to match these with a special symbol. We're going to say that if I have an add, that's going to be a string of a plus symbol. We're going to say that subtract, it's going to be the symbol of a minus. We're going to say multiply, it's going to be the symbol of star. And then we're going to have divide, which is going to be a slash. And what we're going to do inside this little space here, we're going to be injecting the operator dictionary with our operator choice. Okay. So dictionaries are a unique data type that takes a custom index for the value stored within that data set. Therefore, I'm accessing the add key, it will return me the plus sign. If I access the subtract key, it's going to give me the minus. If I access the multiply key, it's going to give me this asterisk. And if I access the divide key, it's going to be this. And then at this point, it should be it should only be these 3 that are possible because we're controlling the operators. Therefore, our operator choice, which only should be these 4 values, we will be able to grab these the symbols that are related to it. So our code is saved. Let's refresh. There we go. We have 0 and 0. We're currently starting at add and subtract. So let's try something like 12 and 3. So we have 12 and 3. Let's try to divide, calculate, and we get 12.0 divided by 3.0. It's going to be equal to 4.0. And that is our little basic calculator app that we have created in Streamlit. So to start from our very beginning, what we have to do is the following. We must, if we look here, we must install Streamlit like so. You run the Python program, you use -m to execute the module called pip, ask it to install a package name that you have, which is in this case called Streamlit. And after it's installed, you're more than welcome to start coding in Streamlit. So what you want to do first is do an external import. You're going to import this newly downloaded package called Streamlit, and you're going to call it as st, so that anytime we need to use a Streamlit component or a widget, we can just reference it by st dot rather than Streamlit dot to access its methods and functions and so on. To run a Streamlit file, you're going to write python-m streamlit and run, and then the name of the file that you are currently trying to run, which is a Streamlit app. You can write the title with st_title. You can write little blurbs of text like a print statement by doing st.write. You can do numeric input with st number input. Make sure to set a label and key. If you want an initial value, you can always set a value to start off right away. In this situation here, I wrote a little if statement saying that if num2 is equal to 0 or a negative 0.0, which we saw that little behavior of, we said that, hey, it can only add, subtract, and multiply. In all else, we're going to say that it is add, subtract, multiply, and divide when our second operand is not a 0, so that we're never dividing by 0. Then we don't have to write our try-catch clause. And then they could to choose an operator they would like to use. And then in here, if we created a calculate button where with the label calculate, if we were to click calculate, it will do the calculation based on the operation that we chose. In this case, we chose add. So the result variable has been updated to our left operand on the right operand being added all together. And then we display that by using a formatted string where injected num2 here. We created a little data set called dictionary where we were able to create custom indexes to match the proper symbols that we wanted to show in our string. So when we were able to reference the index of add from this operator dictionary, we were able to access this symbol, which was plus, and then we got to inject 3.0, our second operand, and we were able to show result like so, and we got a message like that. So if I were to subtract here, again, we get 12 minus 3, which is 9.0, and that was our basic calculator in Streamlit. And as always, thank you for watching and stay classy.